Hello again. I'm really grateful that Martha asked me to come today and talk about this new book by Thich Nhat Hanh called Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet. It's a wonderful book, and it's the last book Thich Nhat Hanh wrote before he died a couple months ago, and certainly a relevant topic. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with him, Thich Nhat Hanh lived from 1926 to 2022. He was a Vietnamese Buddhist monk, peace activist, prolific author, poet, teacher, and founder of the Plum Village tradition, or the Order of Interbeing, from which this brown jacket comes. This is the symbol of my ordination in the Order of Interbeing. He's also known as the founder of Engaged Buddhism and the father of mindfulness. You've been hearing a lot about mindfulness, and none of that would have happened if it weren't for the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh. He was a major influence on Western practice of Buddhism and a major influence in my life. In some ways, you might say he saved my life. I was kind of lost in a world of drugs and alcohol, and learning about Thich Nhat Hanh and the 5 mindfulness trainings turned my life around. He retranslated the 5 Buddhist precepts written by the Buddha 2,600 years ago into the 5 mindfulness trainings. And in 1997, I went through the formal ceremony accepting those 5 mindfulness trainings, and he gave me the name Peacemaker, Calling of the Heart. I'd like to tell the story of that day. And it's the preface of a book I just wrote. That this is a proof version of it, but it'll be out in about a month and available on Amazon. And the preface of it tells about my first interaction with Thich Nhat Hanh. I was racked with self-doubt and uncertainty. Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh had just given me a name, Peacemaker, Calling of the Heart. Now I was walking along a trail on the wooded campus of the Omega Institute in upstate New York in the fall of 1997, trying to practice walking meditation. But Thich Nhat Hanh's last assignment wouldn't leave me alone. If you don't have a home sangha, he said, start one. Was he talking to me? A sangha is a meditation group. Typically, they are led by an experienced practitioner, and I was anything but experienced. Should I really go back home to Cape Cod and start my own sangha? I was not sure what to do. Then I remembered something Thich Nhat Hanh had said earlier in the retreat. He'd said that when he has trouble making a decision, he practices walking meditation. I'm sorry, I was recently diagnosed with Parkinson's, and it's kind of acting up now, and I can't turn my pages. Can you turn that page for me, Tony? That's perfect, thank you. So when he can't make a decision, he practices walking meditation. He doesn't ponder the question. Instead, he follows his breath and follows his footsteps and appreciates the natural beauty around him and in the present moment. Sometimes the answer will just come to him. So I did my best to remember the instruction. I took 3 mindful breaths as I breathed in. I took 3 mindful steps as I breathed out. I tried to maintain my awareness in the present moment. Who was I kidding? Thich Nhat Hanh was a world-renowned Zen master who'd been practicing meditation for more than 50 years. He had published dozens of books about meditation and taught thousands of students. Hundreds came to retreats to hear his teaching. I was a novice at this kind of stuff. I was a newspaper editor who had spent 20 years in drugs and alcohol and had been reading about Buddhism for many years. But I had only been practicing for a few. Did I really think an answer would just come to me like some sort of magical sign? Okay, I told myself, just let go of your doubts and fears, just practice. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. Relax, walk, and breathe. The oak and pine forest was beautiful in the fall. There were many shades of brown in the woods. But then I noticed ahead of me on the path was a large shape in brown moving toward me. It was a monk in brown robes, also practicing walking meditation. As he drew nearer, I looked into his eyes, and there smiling back at me was my teacher himself, Thich Nhat Hanh. He had chosen the very same time to practice walking meditation. He had selected the same path and was walking in the opposite direction so that we came face to face. I joined my palms in the traditional Buddhist gesture and bowed. He did the same. Now, page 3.
No wonder they're all stuck together.
They're all stuck together. Anyway, Thich Nhat Hanh came face to face with me. He smiled at me, and I did the same. I stepped aside and watched him continue. He seemed to be gliding along the path. The answer had indeed come to me. When I returned to Cape Cod from the retreat, I put up some flyers in bookstores and coffee shops and churches. I talked to a few people who shared my interest in Buddhism. The next Sunday afternoon, there were 15 people sitting around my living room meditating and reading the 5 Buddhist precepts. That was the birth of the Cape Sangha. It was still going strong 25 years later, and we'll be meeting here at 4:30 this afternoon. Now, this is no longer from my book. This is me speaking. Buddhists believe we are all one, and we're all one with Mother Earth. And Thich Nhat Hanh teaches that saving the earth depends on living an ethical life, and that means following the 5 mindfulness trainings. And he centers his book, Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet, on the 5 mindfulness trainings. And he says, the insight of no self and interbeing are firm foundations from which you can change your life and behavior. From these insights, right action for your own well-being and the well-being of the planet will naturally flow. So let's look first at the first mindfulness training. Reverence for life. Aware of the suffering caused by the destruction of life, I'm committed to cultivating the insight of interbeing and compassion and learning ways to protect the lives of people, animals, plants, and minerals. I'm determined not to kill, not to let others kill, and not to support any act of killing in the world, in my thinking, or in my way of life. Seeing that harmful actions arise from anger, fear, greed, and intolerance, which in turn come from dualistic and discriminative thinking, I will cultivate openness, non-discrimination, and non-attachment to views in order to transform violence, fanaticism, and dogmatism in myself and in the world. Well, what does this have to do with saving the world? It's mostly talking about not killing. And the 10 Commandments include thou shalt not kill, but this goes a lot farther than that. He argues that we have an obligation to strive toward nonviolence. A less violent planet is a healthier planet. War, for example, is an extremely destructive element in the environment. We're just learning this morning that some Russian soldiers were exposed to radiation at Chernobyl because of the war there. And American soldiers who were in Iraq and Afghanistan are suffering illnesses because of the burn pits there. Terrible, terrible environmental crisis caused by war. All kinds of killing and violence are something we need to get rid of in order to save the planet. Okay, let's move on to the second mindfulness training. True happiness. Well, that's something good. Aware of the suffering caused by exploitation, social injustice, stealing, and oppression, I'm committed to practicing generosity in my thinking, speaking, and acting. I'm determined not to steal and not to possess anything that should belong to others, and I will share my time, energy, and material resources with those who are in need. I will practice looking deeply to see that the happiness and suffering of others are not separate from my own happiness and suffering. That true happiness is not possible without an understanding and compassion, and that running after wealth, fame, power, and sensual pleasure can bring much suffering and despair. I'm aware that my happiness depends on my mental attitude and not on external conditions, and that I can live happily in the present moment simply by remembering that I already have more than enough conditions to be happy. I'm committed to practicing right livelihood so that I can help reduce the suffering of living beings on Earth and reverse the process of global warming. Yes, here he talks about right livelihood, not having a job that contributes to global warming. And he argues that we really need to understand that we already have everything we need for happiness. Acquiring more things does not bring more happiness. Possessing things that should belong to others includes taking natural resources that belong to the planet or to other people who live nearby. Our whole history of carbon-based consumption is really a history of theft and stealing, and this ethical precept tells us against that. And also in our own personal lives, how often have we said things like, well, I'll be happy when I get my new car or my new house or my new stereo or new computer, new iPhone, always thinking we need more. And learning that we don't need more to be happy is a great way to help preserve the planet. Okay, now the third mindfulness training. True love. Aware of the suffering caused by sexual misconduct, I'm committed to cultivating responsibility and learning ways to protect the safety and integrity of individuals, couples, families, and society. Knowing that sexual desire is not love and that sexual activity motivated by craving always harms myself as well as others, I'm determined not to engage in sexual relations without true love and a deep long-term commitment made known to my family and friends. I will do everything in my power to protect children from sexual abuse and to prevent couples and families from being broken by sexual misconduct. Seeing that body and mind are one, I'm committed to learning appropriate ways to take care of my sexual energy and cultivating loving kindness, compassion, joy, and inclusiveness, which are the four basic elements of love for my greater happiness and the greater happiness of others. Practicing true love, we know that we will continue beautifully into the future. Now, what does sex have to do with saving the planet? But what does have to do with saving the planet is true love and understanding true love. And he says that these four elements of true love, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and inclusivity, are important in loving Mother Earth and loving everybody on the planet. You would never want to do anything to harm the earth or harm the other inhabitants if you really embrace the spirit of true love. Treating everybody with love is an important step towards saving the planet. Okay, the fourth mindfulness training, loving speech and deep listening. Aware of the suffering caused by unmindful speech and the inability to listen to others, I'm committed to cultivating loving speech and compassionate listening in order to relieve suffering and to promote reconciliation and peace in myself and among other people, ethnic and religious groups and nations. Knowing that words can create happiness or suffering, I'm committed to speaking truthfully, using words that inspire confidence, joy, and hope. When anger is manifesting in me, I am determined not to speak. I will practice mindful breathing and walking in order to recognize and look deeply into my anger. I know that the roots of anger can be found in my wrong perceptions and lack of understanding of the suffering in myself and in the other person. I will speak and listen in a way that I can help myself and the other person transform suffering and see the way out of difficult situations. I'm determined not to spread news that I do not know to be certain and not to utter words that can cause division or discord. I will practice right diligence to nourish my capacity for understanding, love, joy, and inclusiveness, and gradually transform anger, violence, fear that lie deep in my consciousness. So this is about speaking and listening. And Thich Nhat Hanh's nickname is Thai, which means teacher. Anyway, Thai argues that deep listening is the most important skill in saving the planet. We need to listen to people with whom we disagree. For example, suppose there's a big oil executive who's really in favor of selling a lot more gasoline. He could argue that there are a lot of poor people in this world who cannot afford electric vehicles and need cars to get to work, and they have to buy gasoline in order to get there. And an environmental activist might not want to listen to that, might not want to hear those words. But deep listening means listening to those people with whom we disagree. And I think that's really important. And also, loving speech is really important, so that when you talk to these people, you don't talk in a way that causes discord and anger, but can soothe over the differences and help create harmony. This is a direct quote from the book. He says, if you want to save the planet and transform society, you need brotherhood and sisterhood. You need togetherness. Whenever we speak about the environment or peace or social justice, we usually speak in nonviolent action or technological solutions. We forget the element of collaboration is crucial. Without it, we cannot do anything. We cannot save the planet. And now we're ready for the last mindfulness training, the fifth mindfulness training, nourishment and healing. Aware of the suffering caused by mindful consumption, I'm committed to cultivating good health, both physical and mental, for myself, my family, and my society by practicing mindful eating, drinking, and consuming. I will practice looking deeply into how I consume the four kinds of nutriments, namely edible foods, sense impressions, volition, and conversation. I'm determined not to gamble or to use alcohol, drugs, or other products which contain toxins, such as certain websites, electronic games, TV programs, films, magazines, books, and conversations. I will practice coming back to the present moment to be in touch with the refreshing, healing, and nourishing elements in me and around me, not letting regrets and sorrow drag me back into the past, nor letting anxiety, fear, and craving pull me out of the present moment. I'm determined not to try to cover up loneliness, anxiety, or other suffering by losing myself in consumption. I'd like to read that sentence over again because that's the one that gets to me the most. I'm determined not to try to cover up loneliness, anxiety, or other suffering by losing myself in consumption. I will contemplate interbeing and consume in a way that preserves peace, joy, and well-being in my body and consciousness, and the collective body and consciousness of my family, my society, and the earth. Again, this is a warning against conspicuous consumption, all the stuff we consume. And even he mentions TV programs and films and electronic games. Consuming those things is wasting energy on silly entertainment when we could be using our energy to save the planet. So here's also consumption has to do with what edible foods we consume. And here's a pretty powerful statement here in the book about food. Not eating meat is a powerful way to help our planet survive. Simply by eating vegetarian, you can preserve water, reduce pollution, prevent deforestation, and protect wildlife from extinction. If we stop consuming, they will stop producing. It is a way of expressing love and gratitude to the earth. So he's pretty firm about that. The livestock industry is one of the greatest contributors to global warming through the greenhouse gas emissions. And we can all make a difference by... He says in another book, even if you can't be a complete vegetarian, just having a vegetarian day or two in the week will make a difference and slowly reduce the amount of meat we consume. So the main point of the book is, in conclusion, that the best way to save the planet is living a mindful life, living an ethical life, following these ethical precepts. And that's the bottom line. I recommend everybody get the book. I understand the Unity Book Club is reading it this month, and I can't recommend it highly enough. Thank you very much.
You have been watching the message from our Sunday celebration service here at Unity on Cape Cod, providing a positive path for spiritual living. Please join us every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. at 147 Walton Ave, Hyannis, Mass., and visit us online at unityonCapeCod.org. This video was made possible in part through a grant from Unity Worldwide Ministries and the Templeton Foundation.